Hey y'all, it's me, Buzz Ketchum, and welcome back to Alright, and today we'll be reviewing episode 8 of Canada's Drag Race Season 5, where I'm asking the question, what did just happen? Because I'm confused. In today's episode, our final 5 were challenged to hang out with Brad Goreski in a new talk show style show called What Just Happened, and the runway category was Statuesque. But instead of going queen by queen to break everything down, first we're going to talk about this challenge, which, spoiler alert, may have been one of the worst Drag Race challenges of all time, and then jump into those runways. So this challenge starts with some cold openers from Brad Goreski, intended to elicit some laughs from the group and audience, where Brad asks the Virgo queen if she's actually a Virgo, to which she jokes that she's not, and asks Minhi Wang, the bodybuilder, if she hit the gym today, to which she says no, she hasn't. And the next section of this challenge is called the Chomping Block, where the group is voting on superlatives, and the queens submit their vote by showing the face of the queen they like to vote for that's been glued to a giant cube. And to the questions of who is the most fashionable, the group votes for Perla. And to the question of who paints the best mug, the group votes for Helena. And to the question of who is the least fashionable, we see a little bit of a split vote, where we have 2 for Minhi and 2 for Virgo. Then we finally get a chance to hear some of the queens speak as we move into an individual question and answer, where each queen gets to answer one question tailored specifically to them. Brad asks Perla where she gets her fashion sense, and she says her grandma. Brad asks Virgo what it was like being in a drag competition with her drag daughter, Sanjina, to which she says she was very proud. And then Brad asks Minhi the question, you said you felt underestimated in this competition, who was underestimating you? To which she says, myself. And Makayla is asked what it's like being the drag daughter of Isis, to which she says they can both shine in their own lights. And finally Brad asks Helena if she was surprised that she didn't win either of these season's design challenges, to which she says she's not surprised but is ultimately proud of her looks. And the next section of this challenge is called Defend Your Drag, where the queens take turns defending their questionable looks or performances from earlier moments in the season. And this is kind of an odd section because 4 out of the 5 queens are shown a photo of a look that was talked about as being bad, or a performance that ultimately just didn't land in the case of the Virgo queen. But for Perla, they just show an image of her mug from the Time and Place runway, where she's got this Victorian Gothic thing going on. And in the next section, we have an open question and answer where Brad asks the group questions like, what advice do you have for new drag queens? What's the biggest misconception about drag queens? And what do you say about people who say drag is bad for children? And in the next section of this challenge, we get an opportunity to hear the girls do a cold read of a fight from Canada's Drag Race Season 3 involving Jada Shada Hudson, Miss Fiercelicious, Bombay, and Chaos. And in this section, Helena Poison is an absolute standout. She gets Miss Fiercelicious's lines and acts them out pretty comedically in a whiny, petulant child voice. And lastly, in this challenge, we see an emotional video from each queen's partner or family member, which of course elicits a very emotional response from each queen, bringing most or all of them to tears. And this section of the challenge was actually really nice, but it was also kind of bizarre to include in the challenge at all, because it begs the question, are we as audience members and the judges on the panel supposed to be evaluating like how emotional their response is to these videos? Because if that was the intention, I've got to comment that it feels a little exploitative, because I don't think anyone's emotional response from videos like this should be evaluated at all. But that wraps up our challenge, which essentially was the show's attempt at a charisma check, I believe. I never felt like anything more than a reunion or a Brad Goreski take on T.S. Madison's Bring Back My Girls, you know, minus the rest of the cast. Which isn't to say it wasn't entertaining and I didn't enjoy it, because I did. I liked the opportunity that we got to get to know these queens better and kiki and have a laugh with them. But as a challenge to be evaluated, I think it was horrible and didn't make any sense to me. Because firstly, it felt like several sections of this challenge were highly impartial to the queens. Like for example, the openers that were only given to 2 queens, and then the group responses, to which we only saw some responses from some queens. And even the individual questions, while tailored to each queen, were kind of awkward in how they asked everyone but Perla an emotional, self-reflective question. And a lot of it, like the superlatives section, was fun, but just not evaluatable in any form or fashion in the context of Drag Race challenges. Because the thing is, if they were trying to do a charisma check of sorts on this final 5, then why not let the queens themselves actually host something and hold a mic? For example, imagine if this challenge were done in reverse, where the queens had to host a show where the guests were the judging panel, or where maybe the guest panel was filled with the eliminated queens from this season. This truly would have been a check on their charisma and demonstrated their ability to handle other big personalities while showing off their wit and how they deal with unexpected twists and turns in conversations. Instead though, we got this nothing burger of a challenge made up of parts Frankenstein together from things like mini challenges and finale episode interviews. And because the parameters on evaluating what exactly the queens were doing in this challenge were so vague, there was no payoff in how the judges determined placements, which we'll circle back on after we cover the runways. Overall though, I think this challenge was a big fat rot. I'm apparently not the only one who thinks so, as the IMDb score for this episode is currently sitting at 6.3, which is a pretty far fall from last episode's design challenge 8.5. And now, in the order they hit the runway, don't look or you'll be turned to... It's Helena Poison. Well, the runway is giving us a little Medusa, I hardly know her, fantasy, but with a twist, because y'all wanted a twist, eh? We are not her victims, but Medusa herself has been turned to stone. And conceptually, I think Helena did an amazing job in hitting this brief in an obvious yet nuanced way. Because we know about Medusa's stone-gazing powers, but with Medusa herself already being turned to stone, we, the viewers, are left with a little bit of question and intrigue of how she got herself in this situation. I also think the execution of her looking like a statuesque stone was done really well. The garment is stiff, and the snakes now turned to stone, and her hair all look really cool, plus the makeup that she's done to give the cracked and spooky appearance to her face is great. Well, she was fully committed to the bit, head to toe on this look, and the dragon drama of it all, I'm gonna give a hot. And next up, we're heading all the way down to Egypt for some Nefertiti realness, served up by Makayla Couture, who here on the runway is paying homage to maybe one of the most iconic statue heads of all time. Nefertiti? I hardly... well, I actually know her quite well. The Nefertiti look Makayla's presenting feels very powerful, and she communicates that both with the color of the outfit in that gold and regal royal blue, and also in the physicality of how strong she looks walking the runway holding that scepter. I really love to see Makayla playing around with something that feels big and bold and tells a story, but it's still a look that she looks absolutely sickening and snatched in. I'm gonna give this look a... And next up, Perla, let down your long hair. It's Perla, who says she's serving us the bust of Rapunzel. And from a fashion perspective, I will say I really enjoy this look. I think she's achieved a really cool silhouette where this white coat is intended to look like the stone bust that you might see, and then the skirt, maybe the pillar that the bust is sitting on. And I like how this look is giving nods to the fashion houses she loves, like Schiaparelli, Dior, and Chanel. This runway looks like somebody actually dressed a model for a real fashion house runway presentation, which is something we really don't see very often on Drag Race. But from the perspective of statuesque, I am kind of here sitting on Brooke's side tonight, who is giving her the critique that this didn't really read as statue on first glance. Because like, it wasn't even until her confessional that I understood that she was supposed to be Rapunzel, much less that she was supposed to be a bust of Rapunzel. Because I think the obvious question there is like, why are you a bust of Rapunzel? To me, all I really think of when I think of her is the long hair, and I'm not connecting that idea to statues or busts or anything like that. And so as a look, yeah, I would give this a hot, but for this brief, we're gonna leave it at a warming up. And next up is the Virgo Queen, who on the runway says she is giving us Grecian goddess Athena. And this will kind of confuse me conceptually because it doesn't immediately come to my mind that Athena is a Virgo. And I also don't understand why Athena here is holding the scales of justice. The goddess who does carry the scales of justice is known as Themis, I think. And the other confusing thing is that if we take Grecian mythology completely out of the mix and just look at her being like a Virgo holding scales, it's even more confusing because the scales are typically associated with the star sign, the Libra. So I don't know what thought process was going on here, but that's what we have. As a look though, I will say the gown is gorgeous. She looks pretty, and there are some great details on this. Like the tip of this rhinestone structured corsetry we see sticking out of the gold gown. I think though this would have been a great opportunity for the Virgo Queen to really play with her makeup, like Helena did, you know, add some cracking details or something like that, just to really give another nod to the brief. This is another look where I'm like, yeah, she looks really pretty, but I didn't look at this and think statue. But it definitely is more statuesque than, let's say, like Perla's look. So I'm gonna give this look a very safe. And next up, I don't remember eating prawns. It's Minhi Wang, who is dressed like a shrimp. But why, you might be asking? But let's not forget that our Lord and Savior Hilary Duff once asked the question, why not? Things Hilary Duff did. That. But the real answer to the question of why is Minhi Wang dressed like a shrimp on the runway tonight is because in Australia, they, I guess, really love shrimp and have a giant one as a statue that is 35 tons and 9 meters high. And once I learned that there was a real life statue she was referencing with this look, I absolutely fell in love with it. She's giving us a very glamorous and camp take on something that represents her heritage of being from Australia, and also subverts our expectations of what we think a statue might be in our minds. And this outfit could have gone really many wrong, but it works because it's so pretty and stupid and absolutely covered in rhinestones, from her face to her hair that's literally a shrimp tail. And I love how she also has layers to it with like the armor scale pieces in the front and the mask. And this is, I think, my favorite Minhi Wang runway she's presented throughout this entire season. I think she should be really proud of this look because it's a lot of fun. I'm gonna give it a And before we go any further, I've got to say thank you so much to my generous patrons who truly do make my channel possible. And in exchange for their monthly pledge, they get exclusive member benefits like early access to my YouTube videos, the ability to vote in Hottest Hot polls for every video, and access to exclusive content like my reactions to every episode of Drag Race that I review. And to celebrate 6 years of Bussy Queen, I'm doing something super special and super crazy. Starting right now through the end of January 17th, all new patrons can get 60% off their first month of membership on my Patreon by using code 60 at checkout. See you there. Which brings us to our placements this episode. As we've discussed, I think this was a bullshit challenge intended to let the producers progress whoever they wanted to progress into the finale. Because even in the critiques, nothing is really making a lot of sense. Where we hear basically everyone get positive feedback, with Helena getting the most, I think rightly so, for her performance in the cold read of that untucked fight. We also hear some queens get, I think, a little too much positive feedback, like Minhi Wang. Because Brooke directly tells Minhi, "You were authentic and raw and charming, and it was really nice to see you come into your power," which is a really nice thing to say, and I'm glad Brooke felt that way about Minhi, but it's also a lot to say to the queen who objectively said the least. And I was shocked that Brad was the only judge in the panel to call her out for essentially avoiding his question about which queen in the competition was underestimating her. But as for who gets the most critiques, it is of course Perla. And what Brad says to Perla is that he was hoping she would go deeper and reveal more of herself, which I think is an interesting thing to say to the person who got the question, "Where do you get your sense of fashion from?" and who in the Defend Your Drag section wasn't even given a funny image. Anyways, the win goes to Helena Poison, which I support. I was most entertained by her in this bizarre challenge. And then the bottom two are Makayla Couture and Perla, which I really don't support. I think Minhi was the weakest in this challenge if we're gonna evaluate it at all, and I was confused to not see her in the bottom as well. As for the lip sync though, Makayla Couture absolutely proved how, why, when, and where she deserves this crown. This was a stellar performance from her to a song called Desperate Measures by Mariana's Trench. Like, I am not exaggerating when I say she lip synced for her life. She ate that up. She devoured Perla whole. She devoured Perla's whole. And Perla unfortunately had a just okay showing in this lip sync, which was surprising because she really has been such a powerhouse in so many of the lip syncs this season. But I think that braid wrapped around the top part of her body and the cumbersome nature of the clothes she was wearing kind of prevented her from going off queen. And so the judges here asked Makayla to stay, which I think is the right choice. But it did feel weird saying bye to Perla in such a nothing burger of a challenge and episode. But with Perla out of the picture, we now have a final four of Helena Poison, who currently has one win from this episode and no bottom placements. Makayla Couture, who has a win from the 90s Girl Group Challenge and 2 bottom placements. Minhi Wang, who has 2 wins, both in design challenges. And finally, the Virgo Queen, who has 2 wins, one from the Go Off Queen premiere and another from the Lip Sync Slay Off Extravaganza, and 2 bottom placements. So I'd like to know from you down in the comments below, who are you hoping snatches the Canada's Drag Race Season 5 crown, and why? And finally, let's talk hottest hots for the runway. I'm gonna give it to Minhi Wang. And I also asked my patrons over at patreon.com/BussyQueen to vote on their hottest hot this week, and they've chosen Helena Poison. Lastly, I want to give an extra special shout out to Ashton, Felicia, Laura, Matthew Burns, and Will and Tana, who are all supporting me at my Bussy Queen Collector tier. See y'all later. Love ya. Bye.